Max makes a huge statement on the 2026 car. Ferrari gives Leclerc some hope for the coming season. And Fernando makes a retirement hint. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Formula One just witnessed one of the most significant personnel moves in recent memory. And if you think you understand what's happening behind the scenes in the paddock, you're about to have your mind blown. What I'm about to reveal shows just how cutthroat the business of winning championships really is. Picture this. You're Red Bull Racing, sitting pretty as the reigning world champions, and suddenly your head of race strategy, the mastermind behind countless victories, walks out the door 18 months early to join your biggest rival. This isn't just any personnel change, folks. This is Formula One chess at its most ruthless level. Will Courtney just made one of the boldest career moves in modern motorsport history. After 22 years with Red Bull Racing, 15 of those as their head strategist, he's packed his bags and crossed enemy lines to become McLaren's new sporting director. But here's the kicker that nobody saw coming. He was supposed to honor his contract until mid-2026. Instead, he's already started work at McLaren, meaning these two teams struck a deal that likely cost McLaren serious money to buy him out early. Let me paint you the full picture of why this move is absolutely seismic for Formula One. Courtney isn't just some engineer switching teams for a promotion. This is the guy who's been calling the shots during Red Bull's most dominant era. When Max Verstappen was pulling off those incredible championship runs. When Red Bull was making those split-second strategy calls that left other teams scrambling. Courtney was the voice in the headset making it all happen. Think about the strategic knowledge walking out of Milton Keynes right now. This man knows every trick in Red Bull's playbook. He understands their decision-making processes, their risk tolerance, their backup plans for when things go sideways during a race. He's seen their data, analyzed their weaknesses, and now he's taking all of that institutional knowledge straight to one of their primary competitors. But wait, it gets even more interesting. Courtney's departure represents the third major exodus from Red Bull in recent months. First, they lost Jonathan Wheatley, their sporting director, who jumped ship to become team principal at Sauber/Audi. Then, Adrian Newey, arguably the greatest aerodynamicist in Formula One history, left to join Aston Martin as their managing technical partner and eventual team principal. Now Courtney follows suit, creating what looks like a perfect storm of talent drained from the Milton Keynes operation. Here's what makes this move particularly fascinating from a strategic standpoint. McLaren didn't just hire any strategist. They specifically targeted Red Bull's strategy chief and were willing to pay whatever it took to get him early. This suggests they see something special coming in the next few years, possibly related to the massive regulation changes hitting Formula One in 2026. Those 2026 regulations represent the biggest shakeup to Formula One in decades. New engine specifications, completely revised aerodynamic packages, different fuel requirements. Essentially, every team will be starting from scratch. In an environment like that, having someone who understands how championship-winning teams operate becomes absolutely invaluable. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella made it crystal clear why they wanted Courtney so badly. According to Stella, his experience, professionalism, and passion make him the ideal candidate to lead their sporting function as they enter what he calls a key phase in their journey as a team. Translation: McLaren believes they're on the verge of something big, and they want Red Bull's strategic mastermind helping them achieve it. The financial implications here are staggering. Helmut Marko, Red Bull's advisor, basically admitted they couldn't match McLaren's offer. He mentioned that what Red Bull offered wasn't of interest to Courtney and that McLaren's sporting director role came with something much more attractive, particularly from an economic perspective. We're talking about a bidding war where McLaren essentially said money is no object. But let's dig deeper into what this really means for both teams. For Red Bull, losing Courtney represents more than just losing a strategist. It's losing institutional memory, continuity, and a proven winner. This is someone who's been with the team since they entered Formula One in 2005, starting as a strategy engineer and working his way up through the ranks. He's seen every evolution of this team, from their early struggles to their current dominance. The timing couldn't be more challenging for Red Bull either. They're facing increased competition from multiple fronts, dealing with cost cap restrictions, and now navigating major personnel changes while trying to maintain their competitive edge. Replacing someone with Courtney's experience and success rate isn't like hiring any other engineer. You're looking for someone who can think 10 moves ahead during a race, someone who can spot opportunities others miss, someone who thrives under the immense pressure of championship fights. Red Bull's likely replacement appears to be Hannah Schmitz, their principal strategy engineer. She joined the team in 2009 as a modeling and strategy engineer and has worked her way up through the system. While she certainly has the credentials and inside knowledge, stepping into Courtney's shoes represents a massive jump in responsibility and pressure. For McLaren, this acquisition represents something much bigger than just adding talent. It's a statement of intent. They're essentially announcing to the entire paddock that they're serious about challenging for championships, not just occasional wins. Courtney will be reporting to racing director Randeep Singh, creating what looks like a formidable leadership structure focused entirely on maximizing performance. The psychological impact of this move extends far beyond just these two teams. Other constructors are watching this talent shuffle and making their own calculations. If McLaren is willing to spend this kind of money to poach proven winners from Red Bull, what does that say about their internal confidence levels? What do they know about their car development or driver lineup that's making them so aggressive in the transfer market? From a broader industry perspective, we're witnessing the professionalization and commercialization of Formula One talent reaching new heights. These aren't just engineers anymore. They're strategic assets worth millions of dollars. The fact that teams are willing to pay significant buyout fees to acquire talent early shows just how valuable the right people have become in this sport. Courtney himself seemed genuinely emotional about leaving Red Bull, acknowledging the incredible relationships he built over more than 2 decades. His statement about hoping to continue seeing his former colleagues in the paddock reveals the personal cost of these business decisions. But his excitement about the new challenge suggests he sees real potential for McLaren to disrupt the established order. Looking ahead to the 2026 season, this move could prove to be the catalyst that reshapes the competitive balance in Formula One. With new regulations creating opportunities for dramatic shifts in performance, having someone with Courtney's strategic acumen could be the difference between McLaren becoming genuine championship contenders or remaining stuck in the midfield battles. The ripple effects of this decision will be felt for years to come, and honestly, this might just be the beginning of the most dramatic silly season Formula One has ever experienced. What happens when a 19-year-old Formula One driver makes one mistake and suddenly becomes the target of death threats from thousands of keyboard warriors? This is the disturbing reality that Kimi Antonelli faced at the end of the 2025 season, and it's a story that exposes the dark underbelly of modern motorsport fandom. Picture this. You're a teenager living your dream, racing wheel to wheel with the best drivers in the world. You make one error during a race weekend in Qatar, and within hours, your social media is flooded with vile abuse, threats against your life, and accusations that you're some kind of traitor to the sport. This isn't fiction. This is exactly what happened to Mercedes driver Kimi Antonelli, and the response from the Formula One community has been swift and brutal in its condemnation of these online trolls. The incident that sparked this digital wildfire occurred during the Qatar Grand Prix, where Antonelli made a late race mistake that handed a valuable position to Lando Norris. What should have been viewed as a simple racing error instead became the center of a conspiracy theory storm. Some fans, with absolutely zero evidence, claimed that Antonelli had deliberately made the mistake to help Norris in his championship fight against Max Verstappen. The twisted logic behind this baseless accusation stemmed from Mercedes being McLaren's engine supplier. But here's where the story gets even more disturbing. The online hate campaign against Antonelli wasn't just fueled by anonymous keyboard warriors. It was amplified by comments from Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko, who publicly stated his belief that the Italian had made his mistake intentionally. Even Max Verstappen's race engineer made similar insinuations over team radio during the race. While the engineer later apologized after emotions cooled, Marko's comments came much later and added serious fuel to an already raging fire. The consequences were immediate and severe. Antonelli, a teenager who had been actively engaging with fans on social media, went completely silent. He blanked out his profile picture and stopped posting his usual post-race content. Meanwhile, Mercedes had to communicate with the FIA about the extent of the abuse flooding both Antonelli's personal accounts and the team's official channels. We're not talking about simple criticism here. These were death threats aimed at a 19-year-old kid whose only crime was making a mistake while driving at 300 kilometers per hour. Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari driver who knows a thing or two about being in the spotlight, didn't mince words when discussing the situation. He called the abuse absolutely unacceptable and pointed out the fundamental problem with online harassment. These people face no consequences for their words or their complete disrespect toward drivers. Leclerc emphasized that all these drivers have been racing since childhood, dreaming of reaching Formula One, and they're doing everything possible to perform at the absolute limit. Sometimes mistakes happen. In Antonelli's case, the hatred was directed at him for absolutely nothing. What makes Leclerc's perspective particularly valuable is his personal experience with this issue. He admitted that during his first or second year in Formula One, he would sometimes look at social media to see what people were saying about him, which made dealing with criticism even more difficult. His advice to younger drivers like Antonelli is simple but challenging. Ignore everything that's happening online. However, as Leclerc acknowledges, that's incredibly hard to do, especially for someone just starting their career. George Russell, Antonelli's teammate at Mercedes, was equally vocal in his condemnation of the online mob. He called the situation completely unacceptable and noted that while the initial mistake came from Red Bull personnel, who later apologized, the thousands of people hiding behind their keyboards had no excuse whatsoever. Russell challenged these online abusers to take a hard look at themselves and question why they think such behavior is acceptable, not just in Formula One, but in society as a whole. Oliver Behrman from Haas delivered perhaps the most direct assessment of these online trolls, calling them exactly what they are, the lowest form of human beings. As a fellow rookie driver, Behrman understood the unique pressures that young drivers face when entering Formula One. He pointed out that while he hadn't faced the same level of criticism as Antonelli, part of that was due to racing for a midfield team like Haas, rather than a front-running team like Mercedes. Starting your career with a team that's less in the spotlight provides some protection from the most intense scrutiny. Behrman's perspective highlighted an important reality in modern Formula One. Drivers with top teams face exponentially more pressure and criticism than those in the midfield. He emphasized that these young drivers are literally putting their lives on the line to entertain fans and provide excitement for people passionate about the sport. To have that dedication met with personal attacks and threats is not just wrong in a racing context. It affects their personal lives in deeply harmful ways. Isaac Hadjar, the young French driver preparing to step into a front-running Red Bull seat, offered his own blunt assessment of the situation. He dismissed the online critics as complete idiots who know nothing about racing and have never driven competitively in their lives. This lack of understanding, according to Hadjar, is the only reason they feel qualified to make such harsh judgments about professional drivers. The incident has brought renewed attention to the FIA's United Against Online Abuse initiative, which has become increasingly important as fan toxicity has grown more common in recent years. The governing body has been working to address these issues, but the Antonelli situation demonstrates just how quickly things can spiral out of control when inflammatory comments from within the sport itself amplify the voices of online trolls. Red Bull eventually released a statement expressing regret over Marco's clearly incorrect comments, acknowledging the damage they had caused. The incident reportedly further weakened Marco's already tenuous position within the Red Bull organization, showing that even veteran figures in the sport aren't immune to consequences when their words contribute to harassment of drivers. What's particularly troubling about this entire situation is how it represents a broader problem in modern sports and society. The combination of social media accessibility and perceived anonymity has created an environment where people feel entitled to direct the most vile abuse toward public figures, regardless of age or circumstances. For young drivers like Antonelli, who are trying to establish themselves in the most competitive motorsport series in the world, this kind of treatment can be devastating. The unanimous condemnation from the driver community sends a clear message. This behavior is absolutely unacceptable and has no place in Formula One or anywhere else. These are professional athletes performing at the highest level under immense pressure, and they deserve basic human respect regardless of whether they make mistakes or not. As Formula One continues to grow in popularity around the world, incidents like this serve as important reminders that with that growth comes the responsibility to maintain standards of decency and respect. The sport's governing body, teams, and media all have roles to play in ensuring that the passion of Formula One fans doesn't cross the line into harassment and abuse. The drivers have spoken clearly. They won't tolerate this behavior, and neither should anyone who truly loves this sport. What if I told you that one of Formula One's calmest drivers is actually putting on an act? Today, we're diving deep into Oscar Piastri's shocking confession about his famous ice-cool demeanor. And trust me, the truth behind his collected persona will completely change how you see this rising star. You know Oscar Piastri as the unflappable McLaren driver who never seems to crack under pressure. Whether he's battling wheel-to-wheel at Monaco or dealing with team radio chaos, the guy maintains this almost robotic composure that's become his trademark. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. That legendary calmness isn't natural at all. It's a carefully constructed survival mechanism born from one of the most brutal childhood sacrifices in motorsport history. Picture this. You're 14 years old, thousands of miles from home, living in a foreign country with no family around. That was Oscar's reality when he made the life-altering decision to chase his Formula One dreams in Europe. And what he had to become to survive that experience has shaped every single moment of his career since then. The story starts in Melbourne, where a talented young karting driver faced the same impossible choice that haunts so many aspiring racers from Australia. Stay home with family and friends, or sacrifice everything for a slim chance at motorsport glory. Most kids would choose comfort. Oscar chose the dream, and it nearly broke him in ways that still affect him today. When Piastri first landed in the UK at just 14, he wasn't alone. His father accompanied him for those crucial first 6 months, providing a safety net in an unfamiliar world. But then came the moment that would define his entire personality. Dad had to return to Australia, leaving teenage Oscar to navigate European racing culture completely on his own. The choice was stark and unforgiving. Either move into a British boarding school with complete strangers, or pack up and abandon his Formula One aspirations forever. There was no middle ground, no compromise, no way to have both family and dreams. So Oscar made the call that would haunt and define him. He chose the unknown over the familiar. Boarding school wasn't just difficult for Oscar. It was a complete cultural shock that forced him to rebuild his entire identity. Suddenly, this outgoing Australian teenager found himself surrounded by European classmates who didn't understand his background, his humor, or his desperate hunger for racing success. The homesickness was overwhelming, but there was nobody to call, nowhere to retreat, no family dinners to look forward to. Here's where the story gets really interesting. Rather than crumble under the pressure, Oscar's mind developed what he calls a conscious coping mechanism. He began deliberately suppressing his emotional reactions, training himself to remain calm regardless of what was happening around him. It wasn't a natural personality trait, it was a survival strategy. Every time, he missed his family. Every moment of doubt about his choices, every instance of loneliness or fear had to be pushed down and controlled. Oscar learned that showing emotion meant showing weakness, and weakness meant potentially losing everything he'd already sacrificed so much to achieve. So he built walls around his heart and mind that were designed to protect him from the psychological damage of isolation. But the really fascinating part is how this survival mechanism evolved into his racing persona. When Oscar finally made it to Formula One, that same emotional control he developed as a frightened teenager became his greatest competitive advantage. While other drivers lost their composure under pressure, Oscar remained eerily calm because he'd already survived something far more psychologically challenging than any race weekend. Think about his most memorable radio communications. While drivers like Max Verstappen explode with emotion and others crack jokes or show frustration, Oscar delivers information with clinical precision. His engineers get exactly what they need without any emotional interference. That's not because he doesn't care. It's because he's trained himself to separate feelings from performance. The irony is incredible when you really think about it. The personality trait that made Oscar famous in Formula One, his unshakable composure, was actually born from profound emotional trauma. He learned to suppress his feelings so effectively as a survival mechanism that it became his signature characteristic as a professional athlete. Oscar admits there's a conscious effort involved in maintaining this balance. He knows that being completely emotionless would be just as damaging as being overly emotional, so he's constantly calibrating his responses to find what he calls the sweet spot. Too much emotion, and he loses control. Too little, and he loses the passion that drives excellence. Meeting his partner Lily during those boarding school years provided a crucial anchor point in Oscar's emotional development. She became the one person who could see past the protective barriers he'd constructed, witnessing both his vulnerability and his strength during those formative years. Having someone who understood the real Oscar beneath the composed exterior was essential for his psychological health. The boarding school experience wasn't entirely negative, though. Oscar discovered that living with other students was surprisingly similar to having roommates or friends around constantly. This helped him develop social skills and coping mechanisms that would prove invaluable in the highly collaborative world of Formula One racing, where team dynamics can make or break a driver's success. Now, as Oscar navigates his growing fame and recognition, he's applying those same emotional control techniques he learned as a teenager. When fans approach him unexpectedly in supermarkets or public spaces, he draws on that same internal calm he developed to survive homesickness and isolation. The skills that got him through boarding school are now helping him handle celebrity pressure. What's particularly striking is how Oscar views fame as just another element he must tolerate rather than enjoy. Similar to his attitude toward boarding school, he sees public attention as necessary but not central to his core mission. It's something to be managed and controlled rather than embraced or rejected outright. The deeper you dig into Oscar's story, the more you realize that his famous composure isn't confidence. It's compartmentalization. He's become a master at separating his emotions from his performance, his personal desires from his professional obligations, his past trauma from his present success. Every calm radio message, every measured interview response, every unflappable moment under pressure is actually a testament to survival skills developed by a homesick teenager who refused to quit. This revelation completely reframes how we should view Oscar's career trajectory. His rapid success in Formula One wasn't just about natural talent or good timing. It was about emotional resilience forged in the crucible of adolescent sacrifice. While other drivers learned racecraft, Oscar was simultaneously learning how to survive psychological isolation. The most powerful part of Oscar's confession is his admission that this persona is partly an act. The real Oscar Piastri is apparently sharp-witted, personable, and far more emotionally expressive than his public image suggests. But that version of himself feels too vulnerable for the harsh spotlight of professional motorsport, so he continues wearing the mask he created as a frightened teenager. Understanding this context makes Oscar's achievements even more impressive. Every victory, every podium, every moment of success represents not just racing excellence, but psychological triumph over the trauma of childhood sacrifice. He didn't just become a Formula One driver. He rebuilt his entire personality to survive the journey. So the next time you see Oscar Piastri maintaining his legendary calm during a chaotic race, or delivering a measured response in a post-race interview, remember what you've learned today. That composure isn't natural confidence. It's learned resilience. It's not just professional excellence. It's survival in action. And behind that cool, collected exterior is a story of sacrifice and adaptation that makes his success even more remarkable than you ever imagined. What if I told you that one of Formula One's greatest champions just endured his most humbling season ever? Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, has just completed something that seemed impossible just a few years ago. An entire Formula One season without stepping onto the podium even once. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Hamilton says this devastating failure might be exactly what Ferrari needed. Picture this scene from the 2025 season finale. Hamilton climbing out of his Ferrari, knowing he'd just completed 24 races without tasting champagne. For a driver who's won more races than almost anyone in history, this wasn't just disappointing. It was unprecedented. Yet as the cameras rolled and journalists pressed for his reaction, Hamilton delivered a response that shocked the paddock. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't pointing fingers. Instead, he was doubling down on Ferrari's potential. But before we dive into what Hamilton really said about Ferrari's future, let's understand just how spectacular this failure actually was. Ferrari entered 2025 with genuine championship aspirations. This was supposed to be their year. The Scuderia had invested heavily, brought in Hamilton as their marquee signing, and expectations were sky high. Industry experts predicted they'd be fighting Red Bull and McLaren for wins every weekend. Instead, Ferrari managed something far more difficult than winning. They disappointed absolutely everyone. The team finished fourth in the Constructors' Championship, a position that felt like a slap in the face given their resources and ambitions. They didn't win a single race all season. Not one. Hamilton, meanwhile, broke a personal streak that stretched back to his earliest days in Formula One. He'd never before completed a full season without at least one podium finish. The numbers tell a brutal story. While Max Verstappen was collecting victories and McLaren was celebrating their constructors' title, Ferrari was struggling to even reach the points consistently. Small operational errors that might have been forgiven in previous seasons became magnified disasters in 2025's ultra-competitive environment. The field was so tight that a single mistake in strategy or a poor tire preparation could send you tumbling down the order. What made Ferrari's struggles even more painful was how visible they became. The relationship between Hamilton and his race engineer appeared strained at multiple points throughout the season. Radio communications that should have been seamless became tense exchanges. Strategy calls that should have been obvious became sources of confusion. The team that had once prided itself on flawless execution was making rookie mistakes on the sport's biggest stage. The pressure became so intense that even team principal Fred Vasseur found himself under scrutiny. Despite having his contract renewed midway through the season, speculation about his job security persisted. When a team with Ferrari's history and expectations fails so publicly, everyone becomes a target for criticism. Yet here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. When Hamilton was asked about the season's disappointments, he didn't deflect responsibility or blame the team around him. Instead, he delivered a brutally honest assessment that revealed something surprising about Ferrari's internal culture. Hamilton acknowledged that the team has significant work ahead, but emphasized that nobody within Ferrari was living under any illusions about the scale of the challenge. This admission might seem like surrender, but it actually represents something far more powerful. The kind of honest self-reflection that championship teams are built on. Hamilton explained that the entire organization understands they must each play their part in the turnaround. He expressed confidence that meaningful changes could be implemented, suggesting that Ferrari's problems weren't fundamental flaws, but rather fixable issues. Vasseur echoed this sentiment with his own candid observations. The French team principal highlighted seemingly small details that could yield massive improvements. He specifically mentioned tire preparation as an area where minor adjustments could translate into significant gains in grid position. In Formula One's current era, where hundredths of seconds separate success from failure, these marginal gains become crucial. The timing of Ferrari's struggles might actually work in their favor. The 2026 season will introduce completely new regulations, essentially resetting the competitive order. New chassis rules, revised power unit specifications, and updated aerodynamic regulations mean every team starts from scratch. Ferrari's disappointing 2025 season becomes irrelevant when the fundamental rules change so dramatically. This regulatory reset offers Ferrari something invaluable: the opportunity to address their operational weaknesses while simultaneously developing a car for new technical requirements. Teams that have been dominant under current regulations might struggle to adapt, while organizations like Ferrari that have identified their shortcomings could emerge stronger. Hamilton's experience navigating these regulatory transitions could prove crucial. He's witnessed firsthand how teams can transform their fortunes when new rules arrive. His perspective on what works and what doesn't at the highest level gives Ferrari insights they simply couldn't obtain elsewhere. The very struggles of 2025 might have revealed problems that needed addressing before the new regulations arrived. Vasseur's comments about the team's unbroken spirit suggest that Ferrari's core strength, their passionate dedication to racing, remains intact despite the disappointing results. He emphasized that the drive to improve every weekend is part of Formula One's fundamental character rather than a specific weakness within Ferrari. This suggests that the team's competitive instincts are still sharp, even if their execution needs refinement. The closeness of the current field actually makes Ferrari's position more promising than it might initially appear. When small errors are severely punished, small improvements can yield dramatic results. The same competitive environment that magnified Ferrari's mistakes in 2025 could amplify their progress in 2026 if they successfully address their operational challenges. Looking ahead to the new regulations, Ferrari's technical team will be working on problems they now understand intimately. The frustrations of 2025 have provided them with a comprehensive catalog of areas requiring improvement. From strategy development to tire management, from communication protocols to race execution, Ferrari knows exactly where they fell short. Hamilton's commitment to this process sends a powerful message about Ferrari's potential. A driver of his caliber and experience doesn't publicly express confidence in an organization's ability to improve, unless he genuinely believes in their capabilities. His willingness to take responsibility for the collective effort suggests that Ferrari's culture is evolving in positive directions. The upcoming season will test whether Ferrari can transform honest assessment into meaningful improvement. With new regulations providing a level playing field and Hamilton's expertise guiding their development process, the Scuderia has the tools necessary for a dramatic turnaround. The question isn't whether Ferrari can do better. It's whether they can do it fast enough to capitalize on the opportunities that 2026 will present. Sometimes the most devastating failures create the strongest foundations for future success. Ferrari's humbling 2025 season might prove to be exactly what they needed to build a championship-winning organization. Hamilton certainly believes so, and his track record of success suggests we should pay attention when he expresses confidence in a team's potential. Picture this. You walk into a contract negotiation, and instead of facing some smooth-talking businessman who might cut you a deal over dinner, you're sitting across from an engineer with spreadsheets, data points, and performance metrics. Welcome to modern Formula One, where the old-school charm of wheeling and dealing has been replaced by cold, hard numbers. And nobody knows this shift better than Fernando Alonso, who just dropped some truth bombs about how much tougher life has become for drivers in today's data-driven racing world. After 25 years in this sport, Alonso has seen it all. He's worked under legendary team bosses who ruled with personality and passion, and now he's witnessing a complete transformation in how Formula One teams operate. The veteran Spanish driver recently opened up about this evolution, and his insights reveal a fascinating story about how modern motorsport has fundamentally changed the relationship between drivers and team leadership. Let me take you back to understand just how dramatic this shift really is. In the golden era of Formula One, Teams were often led by larger-than-life characters who combined business acumen with an almost romantic passion for racing. These weren't just executives in suits. They were personalities who understood that Formula One was as much about emotion and intuition as it was about engineering excellence. Think about the iconic figures who shaped the sport. Eddie Jordan, the Irish businessman whose team punched above its weight through sheer determination and clever deal-making. Ron Dennis at McLaren, who built a racing empire while maintaining an almost obsessive attention to detail. Flavio Briatore, the charismatic Italian who could charm sponsors and motivate drivers with equal skill. Christian Horner, who continues to balance the technical and commercial sides at Red Bull with remarkable success. These leaders operated in an era where gut instinct mattered as much as telemetry data. Contract negotiations often involved personal relationships, shared visions, and sometimes just the ability to convince a driver that together they could achieve something special. It was a more human approach to what is fundamentally a very technical sport. But the Formula One landscape has undergone a seismic shift in recent years. Teams are increasingly turning to technical leaders when searching for new leadership, marking a clear departure from the business-focused approach that dominated for decades. This isn't just a minor trend. It's a fundamental rewiring of how modern racing teams operate in an environment where marginal gains can mean the difference between victory and defeat. The examples of this transformation are everywhere you look across the grid. At McLaren, Andrea Stella represents this new breed perfectly. An engineer who worked his way up through the technical ranks before taking on team leadership responsibilities, working alongside CEO Zak Brown in what's become a common dual leadership structure. Over at Red Bull, Laurent Mekies brings his engineering background to bear as both team boss and CEO, collaborating with Red Bull's broader corporate leadership. The pattern repeats across multiple teams. Alan Perriman stepped into leadership at Racing Bulls, bringing decades of technical experience to the role. Ayao Komatsu replaced the more traditional business-oriented Guenther Steiner at Haas. Steve Nielsen took charge at Alpine, while Jonathan Wheatley and Mattia Binotto are set to lead the Sauber project. Each of these appointments represents a conscious decision by teams to prioritize technical expertise in their leadership structure. Perhaps the most significant example of this shift is Adrian Newey's appointment as team principal at Aston Martin. Here's a man who spent his entire career perfecting the art of aerodynamics and car design, now stepping into the broader role of team leadership. He's replacing Andy Cowell, who himself came from a technical background, having previously led Mercedes's dominant power unit program. So what's driving this fundamental change in how Formula One teams choose their leaders? According to Alonso, it reflects the broader evolution of the sport itself. Modern Formula One has become incredibly data-driven and technically sophisticated. Every aspect of performance is measured, analyzed, and optimized through thousands of simulations and complex algorithms. The days when a team could succeed primarily through clever business deals or inspirational leadership are largely gone. Today's Formula One demands technical precision at every level, from the design of the car to the strategy decisions made during races. In this environment, having leaders who understand the technical complexities becomes not just advantageous, but essential for competitiveness. This shift toward technical leadership has created what Alonso describes as a more performance-focused environment, but one that may lack some of the personality and intuitive decision-making that characterized earlier eras. Everything is driven by data analysis and scientific methodology, leaving less room for the gut instincts and personal relationships that once played a larger role in team dynamics. For drivers, this evolution presents both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, working with technically minded leaders can lead to more informed decision-making about car development and race strategy. These leaders understand the engineering challenges firsthand and can make more nuanced decisions about where to focus development resources. However, Alonso hints at one particular area where this change might not be entirely positive for drivers. When it comes to contract negotiations, The shift away from relationship-based leadership toward data-driven decision-making could make life more challenging for drivers trying to secure favorable deals. The Spanish veteran jokingly suggests that negotiating contracts has become tougher in this new environment. Where once a driver might have been able to leverage personal relationships or appeal to a team owner's racing passion, today's negotiations are increasingly focused on cold performance metrics and statistical analysis. It's harder to charm your way to a better deal when you're dealing with someone who views everything through the lens of data and measurable outcomes. This observation touches on something deeper about how the sport has evolved. The romantic elements of Formula One, the personalities and passion that made it as much entertainment as sport, are being systematically replaced by clinical efficiency. While this might lead to better racing cars and more competitive seasons, it also changes the fundamental character of the sport. Alonso's perspective on this transformation is particularly valuable because of his unique position in the sport. Having started his career in 2001 with Minardi under the ownership of Australian businessman Paul Stoddart, he's experienced the full spectrum of leadership styles. He worked under Briatore's passionate guidance at Renault, dealt with Dennis's meticulous approach at McLaren, and navigated Stefano Domenicali's leadership at Ferrari. Now at Aston Martin, Alonso finds himself in what he considers a fortunate position. The team has managed to balance both approaches, combining strong technical leadership with the commercial expertise and racing passion that characterized the earlier era. Lawrence Stroll, the team owner, represents what Alonso calls one of the old characters, someone whose passion for racing goes beyond mere data analysis. This hybrid approach might represent the ideal solution for modern Formula One teams. While technical expertise is clearly essential in today's environment, completely abandoning the relationship-building and inspirational leadership that characterized successful teams of the past might not be the optimal strategy. Aston Martin's current technical roster reads like a who's who of Formula One excellence. Beyond Newey's appointment, the team has assembled an impressive collection of technical talent, including Andy Cowell's continued involvement and the recent addition of Enrico Cardile from Ferrari. This concentration of technical expertise, combined with state-of-the-art facilities and substantial financial backing, positions the team as a serious contender for future success. For Alonso, this combination represents the best of both worlds. He gets to work with some of the most accomplished technical minds in the sport while still maintaining the human elements that make Formula One special. The challenge now is translating all this talent and infrastructure into competitive performance on track. The broader implications of this shift extend beyond just individual teams or drivers. As Formula One continues to evolve toward an increasingly technical and data-driven sport, the fundamental character of competition changes. The margins for error become smaller, the importance of technical precision increases, and the role of pure talent versus technical advantage becomes an increasingly complex equation. Looking ahead, this transformation raises important questions about the future direction of Formula One. Will the sport become so technically focused that it loses some of its emotional appeal? Can teams maintain competitive advantage through technical leadership alone? Or will the most successful organizations find ways to balance technical expertise with the inspirational leadership that has traditionally driven success in motorsport? Alonso's confidence in Aston Martin's eventual success reflects his belief that the team has found the right balance. With world-class facilities, exceptional technical talent, and leadership that combines both technical expertise and racing passion, he sees success as inevitable. The only question, as he puts it, is when that success will materialize. The transformation of Formula One leadership from business-focused personalities to technical experts represents more than just a change in hiring practices. It reflects the evolution of motorsport itself, where technical precision and data-driven decision-making have become paramount to success. While this shift brings obvious advantages in terms of car development and strategic decision-making, it also changes the fundamental dynamics of how teams operate and how drivers navigate their careers in this ultra-competitive environment. As Formula One continues to push the boundaries of technical innovation, the balance between human intuition and data-driven precision will likely remain a defining characteristic of the most successful teams and drivers in the sport.